Yep. 7:31.
Good evening and welcome to the January 29, 2019 Board of Education public hearing on the administration's proposed 2019-2020 budget. We did have a meeting yesterday where we heard from probably 10 or 12 community members on various issues. We are going to continue that dialogue tonight. We may have some questions. I know Mr. Scanziano is here, the Pupil Services Director, so we may have some thoughts or questions that we may want to explore if we have time. Same ground rules as yesterday. We are not going to cut anybody off. There are not a ton of people here, obviously, but if you have something very, very lengthy, just let maybe other people go first, and then we can try to do it that way if that's okay. There is, the recording secretary has asked that you, there's a pad, I think, on the lectern, if you just write your name, print your name neatly so she can read it so that it can be incorporated into the minutes. So our only agenda item tonight is to just hear any thoughts from anybody here. So if you have a comment or a question or a thought about the budget, please come on up.
Hi, good evening. Hi, I'm Elena Kajenko. I spoke at the October meeting. If you recognize my face, my son is a kindergartner at A.W. Cox. We've been very pleased with the school so far, but of course, being here tonight, it's to express my desire for more art in his day. He gets 30 minutes once a week, and I know as a teacher in New Haven, that probably breaks down to about 20 minutes a week by the time the kids are really settled and have transitioned, and 20 minutes is not really enough to get any true learning or experience out of the classroom and a true break from the other things that they're doing. I do teach New Haven, and I know that the kindergartners there, it varies how they get it, but generally from what I've researched and found, they get about the same to double what they get in Guilford with the 30 minutes a week. They get either 2 times 45 minutes or 45 minute. And this is yearly throughout the year, every week. So, sorry, I'm really nervous. I don't like talking about
This is probably the last place that you should be nervous.
Not a fan of that. But so either way, it came to about either the same as the 30 minutes once a week to double. So I felt as a parent when I talked to him about what he prioritizes, what he liked the most, and he felt he was getting the most out of, and he did like his double recess, or I guess one is recess, one's choice time. So if it's inside, they can kind of pick what they're doing. He liked it, but he said he still wanted more art. And I said, well, if you're willing to give one up, would you be willing to give up a free choice to go to art instead? And he said he would, that he really just wanted more time to create and do things with his teacher. He really likes her. I know they get a lot of PE, and I thought that if they got a lot of PE or they have this extra time for recess, it still could build in possibly a little bit more time for art. I know that time is a big issue for how can we get all this learning in one day, and in 1 week. But I do know that when they do get the kids into art, then the teachers have more time for prep. I know that when I was teaching years ago, we had more prep and more time to work with our teachers and have meetings and collaboration. And then I knew my teaching was getting better, my kids were getting more out of it. So I know that the classroom teachers could also benefit from having a little bit more time together and away from their kids while during the school day is going. So I just think it is a win-win, and I'm sure you guys already know that would not hurt the kids that have more art. It's just how you do it. I'm sure there are so many more models. I wish I was a little more prepared today with other towns and their data so I can present more ideas. My mom's on the board of ed in Hamden, so I know I talked to her about what they're doing, and they're getting a little bit more than we are. But she wasn't able to, I talked to her today, to get me all this stuff about what it actually is breaking down to. So I just hope that you guys could find it that it is useful enough and you could really squeeze it in, at least one more class a week or one longer class instead of just one 30-minute, maybe 145. Just anything I think would be better than what it is. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you teach elementary school in New Haven?
I teach high school, but
High school. I was just curious, do you know how long the day is in New Haven? For
well,
elementary school?
mine's 7:32, so I'd say when I did elementary, it was like 9 to 3 or 3:30, similar to what it is here. It's not longer, but I did teach K-8. I've done them all, but it's the same, I'd say.
Yeah, because one of the issues that we're kind of struggling with is that their elementary school day is not as long as some districts, and partly that's a function of having 3 bus waves, and so whether we're trying to pack a lot into these days, and
And exhausting the kids.
and exhausting the kids, and the teachers.
I think it's the same. I haven't taught Kate in a long time. It was like 5-6 years ago, but I believe it was like we started around 9 and ended around 3. So it's similar.
Okay.
It was really close.
We can figure that out.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm sure, and that's the thing. I'm sure you guys have. I wish I had brought a lot more with me, and I could probably email some before you guys make any decisions. But I'm sure you have plenty of towns surrounding that you could see just how they break up their week, and for kindergartners or K6 or K8. But thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone else, please, come on up.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rebecca Chung, Guilford parent of an incoming kindergartner or 4th grader at Cox. And I'm here to ask the board to try to allocate some funds for a full-time art teacher at the elementary schools. Based on the budget proposed by Dr. Freeman, I noticed that it wasn't included, but it was considered as a possible addition. I wanted to quote something from Dr. Freeman's budget presentation, and that the budget assumptions were to extend, improve opportunities for all students, be innovative in utilizing personnel and other resources to further student learning and meet mandates. So I see this as an opportunity for the board to try to be innovative with the time that we do have. I feel that it would be hard, like he had pointed out, to cram everything in the limited short day that we have. How amazing would it be for Guilford to be the first, in comparison to the surrounding towns, that we were able to find a new way to fit in and set an example to be like a new standard. I'm confident, based on how you were successfully able to implement more music last year, if there was a way, if we could find some way similar to how you did with music. I understand that from Dr. Freeman's presentation that the state no longer uses those specific hands-on time, so it seems a lot more flexible as to where you could integrate the art time. So I was just curious, when you had first spoke back earlier, when you were talking about art integration, has there been any developments on that, as bringing the art teacher in with the teachers, like the other teachers? Has there been any updates?
Well, that
as
was
far as
part of the subject of a curriculum meeting. Maybe,
Right.
Ms. Sullivan, you could talk about that. I wasn't at that meeting, so.
Yeah, so we actually met last night just prior to this meeting for our curriculum instruction assessment committee. And we did, I'm happy to pass this document around, but we did talk a lot about the art standards. And anyone's welcome to look at this if you'd like, and it kind of goes through pre-K all the way up, talks about the standards at each grade, and then the parts where, if I understand correctly, that are highlighted in yellow are the places where we are integrating. Is that correct?
Those are some examples of places where we're already hitting those standards, and we have talked about working more overtly with the classroom teachers to more intentionally integrate the art standards. An example would be we recently culminated a 3rd grade unit district-wide on ocean animals, brought all the 3rd grade teachers to debrief that unit, and as part of that debriefing activity, talked about the art standards that were embedded and opportunities to embed more art standards moving forward. So no, we haven't done a lot of explicit work. We've been having this conversation since about September or October through now. But it is something that clearly we've heard a concern from the community. We share that value on art, and if we end up moving forward without adding positions to the staff, clearly what we would do is work more directly and overtly to make sure that teachers are integrating the standards into the regular classrooms, and that any time art teachers have in their schedules, they are consulting with, collaborating with their classroom colleagues.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Kim Beckett, 6 Greenwood Lane. And as Dr. Freeman and Mr. Bloss and Katie Balistraci and a number of others know, I am the chair of Guilford's Special Education PTO. I'd just like to comment tonight on the tuition line item and its proposed increase. 15 years ago, I decided to become more involved in special education advocacy. And in order to do that, it was necessary to understand the budget. So I met with Bill Bloss in his office. I met with a number of other Board of Ed members individually, with the superintendent at the time, the director of pupil services at the time. And it was really an education, and I think over 15 years I've probably asked over 100 questions. Back then, in my naivete, I assumed that tuition line item was for children who have developmental disabilities, and I was wrong. Special education covers children who have developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, and emotional disabilities. So I was wrong then, and it couldn't be even more wrong if somebody makes that assumption today. So fast forward to Dr. Freeman's arrival, and through his willingness and Jason Scanziano's willingness to work with parents like me and be able to have us ask those questions and understand the budget much better, I feel that I understand it fairly well to be able to come here and talk about this particular line item. So the tuition line item is, for you guys, is probably a number on a slide, and it's probably a number in 132 pages of your budget, but it really is about human beings. And I ask you to please remember that. The human beings in that line item have very complicated and messy stories. And it can involve a medically fragile student. It can involve a student who is struggling with issues that none of us in this room would ever want to know about. Who pays for that student's needs is messy, and it can involve many different state agencies, but in the end, that number is about a human being, or 2 or 3 or 4. And I'm asking that the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance to remember that, and I'm asking the voters to remember that as well. So my question is this: when the superintendent's budget becomes the Board of Ed budget and then it goes to the Board of Finance, is there an education process that occurs between the superintendent and the Board of Ed and then on to the Board of Finance to understand that there are human beings represented in that line item and the stories behind them? Because they're very complicated, and if you don't know those stories, you don't even have to know the names of who's involved, but if you know the stories behind that line item, I think you'll have a better way to vote yes, to vote no, to make changes, to cuts, whatever. So I'm kind of curious, is there a dialogue that happens privately, I'm assuming it was privately, between the superintendent and the Board of Ed, and then the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance?
Go ahead, you start, or do you want to start, Dr. Balistraci?
I could certainly let Paul start. I think what we try to do is understand at a very high level what the types of students that require out-of-school placement and the types of students we're supporting when we support this budget line. But as you can imagine, and then I'll throw it over to Dr. Freeman, as you can imagine, even as board members, it is not appropriate that we know the specifics of any of these children or families. Those are things information that's housed with Jason and his staff, and to the extent necessary with Dr. Freeman himself. So I fully support your message. I mean, I think that particularly with a line item that's get discussed in a budget as a number, it's so important, like it is with all these numbers, to recognize what they truly represent and the needs they represent. but I don't know,
So I
Dr.
would-
Freeman, if you want to add anything.
To the question about dialogue, conversation, and education, I would say absolutely yes. We talk about special education, we talk about the needs, and we talk about the human value of the special services that we provide. Last year, we went so far as to bring a special education attorney to a Board of Education committee meeting to discuss the importance. But when it comes to telling stories, I will tell you that no, even without names, Jason and I do not share individual stories of students, real students with whom we are working. I can say emphatically that this Board of Education recognizes the importance of our students with special needs and our responsibility to meet those needs. And as Lori shared yesterday, I think that you can see that value in the work that we've done in the district, building out our capacity, supporting the formation of SEPTO. So it's a really important question. I appreciate you asking it. But no, we don't tell specific stories about specific children or families. We talk.
I don't mean to even imply
Yep.
that is what was happening. Even when you go up to Hartford, you hear the scenarios. You don't know who it is, you don't know the specifics, but you hear some scenarios, and they are heartbreaking. They're absolutely heartbreaking. So you kind of see, I always say follow the money. You know, the state doesn't want to pay, so it ends up kind of trickling down to the town. So no, I don't mean to imply that any gossip is going on or any kind of conversations going on, certainly not involving names. But I think if you understand the scenarios behind there, you would understand, and you understand the laws, clearly, you understand that. I think that if you don't mind me adding, the addition of mindfulness,
Yep.
the addition of say something, I think that it may take a couple of years, but my guess is that that is going to affect that line item. I would guess.
When we talk about the programmatic decisions we've made, so when we talk about the alternative high school setting or the therapeutic classroom setting at the high school, or when we talk about the behavioral support settings that we've created at some of the younger schools. So when we talk about those settings, we talk about the sorts of needs that those settings address. When we talk about shifting staff members, we have special education teachers who move through the district at times following the needs of students. So we do talk about the needs of students, but we talk at a very high level. And again, yes, but thoughtfully, carefully, and always to make sure that we're protecting the confidentiality of students and children, of students and families.
So the special education attorney addressed the Board of Ed. Was there also something with the Board of Finance? I know that happened a few years ago.
No, the Board of Finance didn't meet with but we met during one of our operations meetings. We dedicated much of an agenda to a conversation with one of the special ed attorneys from Shipman and Goodwin. And again, I've worked with a number of boards of education across the state. This Board of Education understands the importance of supporting children with special needs.
Excellent.
And this community does.
Thank
And
you.
it comes up a lot, you know, when we're talking to the Board of Finance, obviously,
Sure
because
does.
that is the tuition line is you know, from a purely budgeting point of view, is a challenging line for a couple of reasons. One, you never know what the state's going to do in terms of reimbursement, right? It can say we're going to do something. There's a law that says that they're going to reimburse us at a particular rate. However, the way they wrote the law, the way the General Assembly wrote the law, was that it's, quote, subject to appropriations, close quote, which means we're going to say we're going to fund you at this level, but then we're going to appropriate 75% of that number, and so you're only going to get 3/4 of what we promised you were going to pay. A couple of we're budgeting right now for the September 2019 school year. Well, we don't know who's going to move into the district between now and September 2019. We also, I mean, as long as I'm dinging the state, I think I'll ding the feds for a second. When the Special Education Act was passed in 1973, I think it was, and I've read the report, I've read the committee report, the federal government said that we will pay 40% of all local special education costs. Right now, I think Dr. Keene, what are they down to, about $100,000?
Yes,
It's something like that.
never reached that bar.
It never reached that, and it's gone down. And so it's very frustrating, and it's challenging, but, you know, you touched on one thing. You touched on, there are legal requirements, and we respect the law, and we're going to try to follow the law, but there are also moral commands, and this is an area where doing what's legal and doing what's right actually coalesce pretty tightly. So, we're trying really hard, and I think building in the capacity in district actually probably reduced that line in a significant way. Now, we had to spend some money in district, but I think from the parents' point of view and the kids' point of view, we're spending less money because we built up capacity in district. Parents are happier. The special ed kids are happier, but the regular ed kids are happier too, because it's all, look at the unified sports program. It's worked for everybody. And the Board of Finance was very supportive on that, in allowing us to build out that capacity. So we hope we're doing the right thing. We hope we're trying to.
Win-win.
I hope so.
Very much so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments, other questions, thoughts? Hi.
I'm Jennifer Silva, and I'm from 407 Schoolside Lane, and I just wanted to say, and I've also sent an email, but that I'm in support of the addition of full-time art teachers at all of the elementary schools. I apologize for my tardiness from shuttling kids around, but I did hear that there's been a lot of work in process already to try and integrate more at the elementary schools, which is wonderful. So thank you for your time.
Thanks. Thank you. This is maybe a little unfair for the art parents, and because there are two issues, right? One is it's expensive to add FTEs, especially we did get the bonding chart in. I think I mentioned last night, you all weren't here, but we got a chart in. We do. I was right. We've got an increase in debt service for the next 2 years, and then it starts down. So there will be more flexibility from a budget point of view in 2 years. But there's also this time issue that we've got, right? And there is, and I think the integration issue is a really important one. As I was thinking about it, the language arts component we mentioned last night has a major part of it is communication. Well, one of the ways you communicate is with art, right? And so if in the language arts program the communication component includes art, that is obvious. That's an obvious place for it to be emphasized. But there was some discussion last night about whether parents would support lengthening the elementary school day in order to allow something, more art, more recess, combination, something. And there is, I guarantee that there's no consensus on that within the community, and it's not something we would propose just on the fly anyway. But what if there were, at least in the interim, a program to maybe set up some kind of an after-school activity with art, like a club almost, for the elementary schools? That would not involve a conflict with the regular program in the elementary schools?
Well, so there, at least at Guilford Lakes, I can't speak to the other elementary schools, but as part of the enrichment programming that comes through the PTO, there is an option often actually, for after-school art. And what I've heard from the teachers themselves is, again, because of the duration and the number of students there, that it's very little hands-on time. So
What's the duration, do you know?
It's usually an hour. Enrichment classes are usually an hour.
They were, the most recent set that came out are, I think, asking for pickup at 4:15. So
45
it's actually
minutes.
a 45 minutes,
Okay.
including getting the kids over there. So we had a situation where my daughters were taking the class at Park and Rec, and it turned out the same teacher was teaching at the elementary school, and said I can't tell you that it's the same class at Lakes, even though that would be more convenient for you.
And how many times a week or a month is that enrichment? Do they do art specifically?
As an offering,
Right.
It comes several times throughout the year. I think definitely twice, maybe a third time, and they're usually, I think, I don't know if anybody else is a Lakes, but I think it's usually like a six or 8 week program. It's
Okay.
a week after school, and there's other enrichment offerings also.
Okay.
It's
But anyway.
school dependent because,
school
for
dependent.
example, Lake
That's
doesn't have
a
an
Lake
art
school.
day.
It's a PTO
It's a
offering,
PTO.
Yeah, it's a PTO
Right.
offering.
And parents
and I-
pay
I mean, I know.
Yeah,
is that
and there's a
right?
small fee.
A small
Right,
fee.
I mean, it's a
small fee.
nominal, yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's safe to say that there are some parents that would really not like to add time to the school day, right? Because their kids are getting home late as it is. And there's nothing we can do about that, really. We can't shorten the school day anymore, really. But I know, it's just something to bat around. Maybe, just think about it, see if that seems like something
I think we've locked it.
we need to more. So anyway, just something to think about. I don't know. I mean, we're trying to juggle a lot of things, obviously. And anyway, other comments, other questions? Mr. Ailes? Mr. Ailes has a question or a comment. Take your coat off. It's okay. Well, you're going to get colder. You're going to get colder tomorrow, I think, from what I can tell.
Colder on Thursday.
Mike Ailes, 446 Old Whitfield Street, also Chair of the Board of Finance. I briefly spoke last night, and this is really more of a commentary that would lead into a few different points I would like to make that Kim brought up. When it comes to the tuition line item, the Board of Finance is very clued in to what is included in that item. I don't think we need I almost said, I don't think we need special education for that, but that was, we don't need specific education for those items that are in that line. Every single regular meeting, we talk about tuition, to a point where I have actually gotten feedback from the community members saying, stop talking about special education so much, because my child is a special education child, and maybe one of very few, and I don't know the details of this particular person's child, that may have, you can't really talk about some of the issues and talk about the stories because some of those stories are very unique. And so maybe on a state level, you could talk about 1, 2, 3 students, and it's maybe hundreds. But in a community like Guilford, you might have one student that is spending, or is, I should say, is needing us to spend $100, $150, $200,000 per student. Guilford is not alone. There's a lot of other communities that deal with this, Board of Eds that have to deal with this issue. But I would say that the Board of Finance is very clued in on this. I would add, I was jotting down a few notes regarding basically, we're concerned, but we're also very informed. I would say that, and I don't know a lot of other communities, but when it comes to the Board of Education, the Board of Finance, I would challenge anyone to say that the relationships that the boards have in this town are closer. We have subcommittee meetings. We just had one before our regular meeting in January. We had one in December. We talk about items in the budget. They're an hour, they're an hour and a half. We talk about everything, capital, tuition. Notice I even say tuition now. I don't even say special ed. I don't want to get the email again. Teachers negotiations, and well, not talk about them, but we talk about contracts and where those stand. So we're very clued in. It doesn't mean that we're not concerned about it. It doesn't mean that we don't talk about it every single regular meeting. But it is a very challenging line item, and I don't envy what this board has to go through when you're trying to create a budget and you have a fluctuating line item that is incredibly hard to predict. And we're already looking, if anybody's watching, we're already $600,000 over budget that Board of Ed's going to have to find funds for. So guess what? Putting $600,000 right now back in isn't a bad idea. And the Board of Finance, I think, understands that. Also, I should just note that, and I don't know if it came out last night, that it did. I don't know if it was a strong enough point, is that the Board of Finance cannot necessarily tell the Board of Education where to spend the money. We're not allowed to do that. We can tell the town and be more specific and say in these departments. It's dangerous to tell the Board of Selectmen where to spend their money anyway. But the Board of Education, we're by law, we cannot say spend more here, spend more there. So it really is an overall line item that I learned very early on that we accept the Board of Education budget expenditures every month, but we approve the town because we can only accept. We cannot approve what the Board of Education does because they're state-run. That's one thing that a lot of people come to me and they're like, why don't you tell them to spend more money on that? I'm not on the Board of Education. I can't do that. So I wanted to make that point, and I figured while I'm here, I did it last night, I think I got the dates down. One of the biggest issues is getting people out to vote. I will leave the whole voting, percentages to all of you, but if you want to bring that up. But getting the budget passed with anywhere between a 14 to 20% turnout is incredibly difficult. I will leave the number crunching from the last meeting to anybody else, but you really have to get people to turn out for the budget. It's amazing you don't have to get people to turn out for the presidential election when the big one is the budget. That's the one that affects you the most. So on camera, I'm saying that our regular meeting of the Board of Finance, we will be accepting the presentations of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education budgets. These are after the superintendent has been vetted out by the Board of Education, after the departments have been vetted out by the Board of Selectmen. Did I say that right? Board of Education, Board of Selectmen, yes. So at our regular meeting on Thursday, February 14th, I'm sorry I don't make up these dates. It is February 14th on Thursday. It is a regular meeting. We will accept the presentations, and then we will have another set of budget presentations on Tuesday, March 5th. And then there are workshops that the Board of Finance basically talks and discusses and entertains public comment and listens to anybody who wants to speak regarding the budget on Thursday, March 7th, and again, if needed, on Monday, March 11th. So I encourage, the Board of Finance would like nothing more than get a turnout that the Board of Education gets. We don't really get too many people. We would love to have 50, 75, 100 people out that really want to have input into the budget. So we like company. The Board of Ed, we know the Board of Education gets company. We'd like more company too. So with that, I'll end my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just circle back with that art
Sure.
class question? I just looked it up, and it's a 4-week class that starts in March, which I believe is the second group of enrichment classes this year at least, and for $45, and it goes from the end of the school day at 3:30
To 4:15.
4:15.
Okay, all right. Well, that's,
And it's
I mean, do people like it? Is it people sign up? Is it work?
It is currently maxed out.
Then,
It is
okay.
this time a K through 4 class, so in terms of the
Right.
range of, and they always ask for parent volunteers also to help out.
Okay.
As and please correct me if I'm wrong, so as the liaison at Lakes and having had kids there a while ago, I think what they, oftentimes it's not necessarily the same class every time as well, right? So there'll be enrichment offerings in the fall, in the winter, in the spring, and either parents or community members offer some of those classes, and the class that was offered last fall may not be there
Right,
this
it
fall.
may be, it may not. There are
Right,
some
right.
that tend to come back, and I'm not sure that this is the same art. I'm not sure who's offering right now.
Right. So there's lots of opportunities, but they're not necessarily consistent, I guess was my point.
Right, and sometimes they are more limited, like, to a 3rd and 4th grade
Right,
group,
right, right.
or to a K through 2.
Lakes, and who else does that?
I know Lakes does, I don't
League
pretend
does
to
it,
know the other
definitely.
elementaries.
All the schools have them, but they may look somewhat different. There are PTO offerings, all schools have some version of them, as far as I'm aware.
I don't think Lead has art. It has music often.
Okay.
Usually has music and
Okay.
other.
Okay, great, thanks. Thank you. Other comments, other questions, thoughts?
I don't have a written speech. I missed part of the discussion, but I was here last night, as you know.
Just come on up if you can. The videographer here will be mean to me after the meeting if I...
So I've just been thinking more on the time, and I had a couple of thoughts. I know with the changes last year with the times of schools that passing time was looked at in the high school, and I wondered if there's something of that nature in the elementary level. I don't know. I just know there was there's a schedule that was brought up yesterday by the Melissa Jones principal, and I know that that looks very black and white, and I know that every day is not so black and white. But I wondered if there was any passing time. That was just a thought that I had.
Is there passing time built into the elementary school schedule?
The only passing time that we have built into the lead schedule is when we have two specials back-to-back. And we have like 5 minutes built in between them, but that's often, it's not 5 minutes, it's usually shorter than that. So, but there are, to get from the classroom to recess, to get from lunch back to the classroom, that's transition time, but we don't build a schedule period-wise. So the only blocks that we have that aren't classroom time are usually those special blocks, so.
Okay, so the answer was, there's a little bit, but not much. Right.
I don't know if that can be, put together and looked at a little bit, and even if it's not an additional 30 minutes, maybe the one class could be extended a little bit so that they can work on projects a little bit longer. It's just a thought that I had that you guys might be able to
Yeah,
explore.
the idea of sitting with all the elementary principals and looking at existing schedules and existing times and trying to see if there's a way to optimize time and limit transition time coming out of that class, absolutely, that's something we can do. I'm not sure what it would net out, but it's
Yeah.
certainly an exercise that we would engage in. And clearly, there's a value being placed on it. We're hearing that, so yes, that's something that we'll for sure do.
Okay. Another thought I had, similar to what we saw last year with the Start School Late, is if maybe a committee could be formed to look at this in different ways, the integration. Maybe it involves, board members, principals, various teachers in different grades, even an art teacher from one of the schools to kind of brainstorm where this time could be made.
Seems reasonable to me. You have any thoughts about that?
It's certainly something that's worth considering, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Just some thoughts.
And I think you came in, we were just musing when one of your colleagues was Ms. Silva, is that right? Yeah, okay. I used to be able to remember names, that's fading as time goes on. But one possibility, there are two challenges that we've got. One is just the expense of 2 additional full-time equivalents, which we talked about a little bit last night. And then the other is the scheduling issue that combined with the short-ish school day and the literacy issues, the numerosity issues, recess and music and lunch and all the rest of it. There were a lot of demands, and these kids, I think it's fair to say that we believe that the kids are really pretty tired. They're right. They work hard, and you can argue, that in your first, second grade, that's really hard. But in any event, one possibility is that at least until we have a better handle on the scheduling issues would be to be more deliberate about some kind of an after-school program, just focused on art on a regular basis. We understand that at Lakes there are some opportunities at some of the schools, there are other opportunities, but they're not regular, right?
It's like a 4-week.
Yeah, 4-week thing. So, there's something to think about, and I'd like to maybe ask the administration to think about that, at least in the short term, because that would be easier to implement than trying to figure out. I know that we've heard from a couple of people, can we find time? Well,
No, I honestly, the enrichment classes, I obviously am interested in art for my children. The enrichment classes have been a little difficult for me to fit in for my particular children's schedule. My 4th grader dances now 3 times a week. She does CCD, and now she has to do speech therapy because it's not being covered in her school day. So we're booked every single day. And I think that actually a lot of kids are. So I would just love to see it during the school day. I know it's challenging. I hear all the issues. I do think that if there were full-time art teachers, they could do more of this integration, which I know you guys talked about in the fall. You had a workshop, I believe, like right before that first budget meeting. I think there's value to that, So even if it's not an hour of art a week in the art room, the art teacher can assist the classroom, with different things that they're doing there.
We can talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments or observations? As long as we have Mr. Scanziano here, what do you think about the tuition line? There isn't, yeah, please, come on up.
He learns quickly.
Hello, everyone. Hello. I worked very closely with Dr. Freeman, with Linda, on providing you with a budget that, to the best of our ability, as we know, is fluctuating and unpredictable in nature, with the most accurate account that we possibly could to date. Even since that submission, we have had changes in student programming, students who've moved into the district, students who have exited the district, changing tuition with a direct impact on tuition. Students who've changed residential placements, as well as students who changed day placements. So it's an ever fluctuating, as we know, line item. There is an element of the budget that we submitted that accounts for unaccounted budget items from the 2017-18 school year. So we've had to integrate some of that overage that we're accounting for this school year into our current budget for next school year. Also looking at students who are transition age, high school age students who are completing their 4 years of high school and who may be with us to the age of 21 because of their high needs, and looking at transition-based programming for 4 to 5 students that we're accounting for in this current budget. There is not a significant change in the structure of the budget within special education for supplies, et cetera, but really within that tuition line item, we're looking at the projection of the additional 12th grade students who may be high needs and transition aged, as well as some of the unaccounted budget items within the 2017-18 school year. So,
Jason, the question is, do you feel that the budget line has the right amount of contingency built into it? Is there so much so that you feel that that's a place that we might be able to reduce and you'd still be confident? Is there not enough that leaves you biting your fingernails this early in the process? Talk about the contingency.
Yeah, so talking about the contingency and looking at what we've allocated thus far, it seems that with the budget, with the contingency, and the current requests, we will be very close to what it is that we are projecting at this point in time. Again, that doesn't account for students who move in, students who move out, and changes in placement. But at this point, I'm quite comfortable with the budget that we have submitted and the contingency.
But would you feel concerned so you feel like you have a pretty good target in mind and your numbers reflect that, but but having said that, if something had, if that number was changed, would that then put you into a really uncomfortable place in terms of special ed?
So again, it's a regular examination of students transitioning in, students transitioning out. And so at this point, again, I would be comfortable with the contingency that we have set forth within the budget. However, again, there's always a nail-biting within special education because of that level of unpredictability. I can't say to you that in August we may not have 3 students move in that we didn't account for, which would make I would bite my nails more so than I would be right now. And so I think it is because of the ever-changing nature, based on the current requests that I have and thoughts that I have moving forward in student programming with attorney requests, potential Board of Ed placements, as well as what I'm predicting to be settlement agreements. We are looking, I'm quite comfortable at this point.
Can you talk a little bit about, one of the things that concerns some of us on the Board of Ed is that we had such a large overrun on the tuition item this year. And a year ago, we looked at this and we looked at this and we looked at this, and everybody was comfortable with where we were, and somehow we're 600,000 plus off. $600,000 is a lot of money to Guilford. I guess the question is, are you more confident now than we were last year?
So as a supplementary member of the budget process last year, I wouldn't even begin to project what my predecessor's thoughts were in her budget process. However, I did participate in that process with her and did have some knowledge and some input into what we were projecting. I can tell you that from my analysis thus far, and I look at closing, as Dr. Freeman presented in his budget, closing that gap between what we budget and what we spend. If you actually look at what we spent over the last 4 years, we're consistently over budget every single year. So this budget is an attempt to bring those two lines closer together so that we're minimizing and that I'm asking for what is, to the best of my ability, what we actually need at this point. So
currently, the tuition line stands at a flat $2.9 million in this budget. I have identified it for the Board of Education as a place where we might discuss both increasing that number. During early budget discussions and early budget drafts, we had that number at around $3 million. And as we went through iteration versus iteration, asked Jason to really work on those projections, brought it down to the 2.9 in front of you. And then I also listed it as a possible area for reduction. There is a contingency built into that. It is not based on students who are currently enrolled and our projected needs for them next year. We know that every year those needs change. There are times where students return to us from outplacements. There are times where students come to the community with outplacements that we have to honor, that we will honor. And at times students go into crisis and have emerging needs that require. So, that number has a certain level of contingency built into it. And Jason is being very careful to say he is relatively confident that that will be enough contingency, but when it's such a small n and such a volatile number every year, we could certainly round that up to $3 million and tell you that we felt a little more confident, but we've missed by more than $100,000 in other years, including this current year. Even that might not be enough. We could reduce that line by $50,000. There'd be a little more nail biting that goes on, but we wouldn't really know until we got into next year if that turned out not to be enough. I will point out that in one of the last 8 years, we came in significantly over budget in special education. It was only once out of the last 8 or 9 budget years. It's just difficult to predict. It's hard to project.
Over, under.
We came in under budget. I'm sorry. Yes, we were under budget in one of the last 8 years.
I was going to say, I thought
We've been over 7 of the last. It's just the most difficult number to predict because of the small n, but the high cost associated with some of those tuitions.
Part of it is, again, that we have to vote on a budget 2 months before the state votes on their budget.
Their budget, correct.
And so we don't know what the reimbursement rate. You can estimate. I mean, I think Ms. Trudeau and the Pupil Services Office has done a good job at trying to read tea leaves, but that, there are...
We're projecting 68% this year, which is the lowest expectation, which again exacerbates our local increase because we are expecting a lower reimbursement this year based on the trend that we have been watching.
Okay. Anything else for Mr. Scanziano?
Well, only to say thank you. Thank you. Looking at crystal balls is, even if you have a little information about, right? I mean, we're asking you to do a hard task. I do think we are conscious of the fact that 7 out of 8 of the last budgets we've gone over, and we need to pay attention to that, right? I mean, I think. Knowing what the contingency should look like is a hard kind of prediction. But thank you for what I imagine is a fair amount of time put into trying to figure out what this number should look like moving forward. So I appreciate that.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, other comments? Other board members have other questions? or
I
comment?
just had a quick question for Jason. You don't have to get back up. My question was, within your budget, we were talking about more support for the school social workers and those that interact with kids that may not have designated special needs, but have, need that social emotional support. And so what do you see that looking like if there's more of an effort to be had? And I think that was an intentional, part
We
of
built
your
PD
budget.
off, professional learning.
We are actually in the
Professional
process of
development,
planning
right.
for our March 6th or 8th PD to bring in some professionals from Yale to provide some specific training to our related service staff, which includes psych, social worker, school counseling, in anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, etc. We are also in the process of bouncing around the idea of how can we allocate staff to provide additional supports and services at our middle school level, and really looking at the therapeutic learning center structure at a middle school level and what that looks like, and if we're able to accommodate that. I think we all recognize the need for that, but how we get there is going to be the next step.
And these are conversations that are taking place statewide, and there are districts around the state having these conversations. There are organizations in the state trying to find ways to be more supportive, and I think that there will be collaborations and opportunities forthcoming in the next several months that we're just unaware of right now. And that I would also just point out that one of the things we've done as a district this year is to invite a group of local professionals who work with students to meet with me on an irregular basis to talk about what we are doing as a district, how we message, how we talk about how we talk about achievement, and what we can be doing at that larger umbrella level to make sure that we're aware of those needs and those concerns as well. So not just for the specialists, but as a district. And we kicked off this year with classroom teachers working collaboratively and sharing their practices about how they work to create classroom environments that are supportive and stress reducing rather than anxiety provoking. So it's absolutely something that we're continuing to work on as a district, around specialists, around classroom settings, but also collaborating with others around the state, quite honestly around the nation.
Thank you.
We've also added, if I can just add, we partnered with Guilford Youth and Family in the National Suicide Prevention Grant. Currently, all of the related service staff, including all of the mental health staff, have been trained in what's called QPR training, as well as trusted adult training. That is being rolled out to Guilford High School general education staff in March, as well as Adams middle school staff in March as well.
And on SAT Day, again, as we did last year, we will be offering workshops to all of the non-11th graders, and one of those workshops is around stress management.
Okay. Please, come on up. Yeah, please.
My name is Nuria Miller. I live at 1131 Little Meadow Road, and I came here tonight in support of the art program at the elementary school level. And I don't want to take your time with all the great things that you already heard about, how great art is for the kids and all the research and all that stuff. I came here because for the past couple years, I think it's 3 years, because my son is now in 3rd grade, he's got art on Mondays. Every single Monday, he has art, except of all the Mondays that we do not have school, which means that out of all the Mondays of the school year, he's missed about 8 that other kids have not missed because they don't have art on Mondays, right? And it's been in my head like this idea about switching our elementary school calendar day. And people were talking to me about like, we want more art, but we don't know how to get the time for it, and it's crazy. And I know I wish in my day as a parent and as a mom and as an Uber driver, I could have more hours in my day because I have so much stuff to do that I cannot fit it in 24 hours. So I can just imagine how are we gonna fit it in our children's school day. So my idea was, instead of having like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday day, we should get our week an extra day, like they do at Baldwin, and have like a 6-day schedule where we have A, B, C, D, E, F, or ABC, or I don't know how you want to do it. And that would be a way where we can incorporate a lot more in our kids' week, because now our week would be a 6-day week instead of a 5-day week, Now, if we were to have that schedule, my son, who can keep having art on A day, now if A day falls on a Tuesday, he still is going to have art, because if we have a snow day, if it's a holiday, it wouldn't matter, so he would not be missing his art class. That they already get so little art, but by this, in 3 years, if you add it up, then he's not getting as much art as all the other kids that do not have art on Monday. So that was like my idea of having do an A, B, C, D, E. I mean, it's been done in other schools. I'm sure a lot of teachers are gonna be like, no, because I'm not gonna know what day it is. But we have amazing secretaries in our school that can say in the microphone every morning, hello, teachers, it's 8:30 in the morning, and we wanna remind you that today is an A day. And we all have our schedule that says A day, and we know what our schedule is gonna look like, and it wouldn't be too hard. And the kids are amazing learners, and they're gonna know better than us, what day it is today. My daughter, who goes to Bellin, knows no, you're wrong. Today is not EC day. Today is F day, and I have band, and I don't have this. And I'm like, I don't know, I don't care. Just bring everything to school so you can be prepared for whatever thing you have, because I have no idea what day it is. I have no idea what you have. Just take everything you need and do it. So I think if we start taking that idea about extending our week for a day, we could even fit, wait for this, Spanish for kindergarten, because that's another thing that would be very good for our kids. Start Spanish in kindergarten, because I'll tell you about the research, right? The younger you start learning another language, the better you are at it, blah, 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 blah. You already heard about it, and I think that way you can also start that together with art. And you don't need to hire other teachers, because we already have the teachers, and with an extra day, they can fit 3 more classes in their day. So that's all I wanted to say about art and what I think, and I'm gonna write my name here.
That's good.
And I'm gonna be, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we've talked about the 6-day elementary school
I don't
week.
know that we vetted that one out. That's an interesting idea, worth exploring.
I remember the same exact thing.
And I could even help you if you want me to, Gerard, I was gonna come here with a schedule and make a presentation, but I only have 4 kids, so I didn't have that.
Thank you.
Who wants to follow that? Anybody? Any other comments or questions? Hi.
My name is Clarice Yasuhara, 399 Norton Town, and I missed a lot of that, so I'm just going to say I support what you said. I'm all for the arts in the school, and more language too also help. So, is this to sign the?
Yep, let's just sign in so the secretary can
all right.
take the minutes, prepare the minutes. Are there other questions or comments? Anybody else? Any questions from board members at this point? Okay, well, then we will meet again this Monday, February 4th at 7:30, I assume, at Guilford High School. That's going to be at the high school, not here. Then we may vote on a budget to move forward to the Board of Finance on the 4th, or we may not. We may just carry it over to February 11th. Yes?
I have a quick question. When you were saying about we have to vote on the budget before the state votes,
Right.
is that a law that
Yes.
we have to?
Well,
Why?
it's a complicated answer to a very simple question. The question was, why do we vote on this town budget before the state does their budget? Okay. We vote on the town budget on a specific week in April because that's what's in our charter. The town charter, our local, kind of the equivalent of our constitution. It says when we have to vote on the town budget. The state, the General Assembly session is in a so-called long session, which is January, what is this, an odd year? It's a 5-month session. They start in January and they can go until May. And they could vote on a budget in February or March or April or any other time they want to. They have not voted on one before the last day of the session in my lifetime, as far as I know. I mean, it's just the way it is. And sometimes they voted on it, 2 months after the sessions. So it's, in their defense, our former colleague, Senator Cohen, is probably learning all sorts of things about what's happening in Hartford now. But the state budget is a very complicated thing too, and you've got a brand-new governor and a lot of new General Assembly members. It would be really nice if we knew what the state budget was going to be before we started working on our budget. It's never going to happen. It's not realistic.
So it's not also like trying to change our charter and say like, okay, we should vote after. It wouldn't make.
So the problem with that is that our fiscal year starts July 1st, and so the state may not adopt a budget until the end of June. And so it doesn't help. Yeah, it's an imperfect world, and that's the best we can do. So, so February 4th is our next meeting. We may act on the budget. We may also act on our replacing Senator Cohen then, or may not. And we have a regular Board of Education meeting February 11th. If we don't vote on the budget on the 4th, it'll be on the agenda for the 11th, because we do have to present to the Board of Finance on Valentine's Day. Well, you're the Board of Finance chair, so right. Well, there's
nowhere in the charter
that has to be on the Valentine's Day.
I'm very familiar with the charter.
There is an argument, by the way, that the charter, that we could vote on our budget 3 weeks later or a month later. If we amended the charter, we'd have to amend the charter. But there's an argument that we should, and sometime in my next life I'll look at a charter revision commission or something, but it's complicated to amend the charter. So, in any event.
Is that like a town thing?
Yes. The charter is it's the equivalent to our Constitution. It's voted on by the voters. It is effectively the contract between the voters, the citizens, and the government. You know, it's kind of like those are the rules that anybody in government has to operate under. So we don't have any choice. That is what the charter says right now.
But then don't you get into practical issues of things that need to move forward based upon the budget, that if the budget isn't already in place,
Yes.
won't be able to?
Sure.
Yeah, the town needs that time to get up and running.
Yeah, it's the best we can do. It is, but anyway. All right, well, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate everybody who came out. Thank you.
Lovely weather.